Ingliston in Scotland, the venue for the 12th round of the Formula Vauxhall Lotus Championship. The confines of the Royal Scottish Showground providing a really demanding circuit and a drastic change from those that many of the drivers are used to. Warren Hughes currently leads the title chase from Kelvin Burt and Piers Honeysett. But a good grid position is all important here at the Scottish circuit. There aren't too many overtaking places. Series leader Hughes has only qualified in 5th position.
It's safe to say it's certainly an interesting circuit. Whether I like it or not is another question, but no, I mean, compared to some of the quicker circuits that we've been racing on in the British Championship this year, it's certainly hard to get used to. You don't really get into a rhythm. The corners are mainly very tight, so you're braking very hard, just trying to accelerate cleanly out of them. There's no real challenging quick corners, so I have to say it's not really my cup of tea.
Well, I've just got to finish every race, and the higher up in the points, the better. As long as I'm in front of Warren, I think we're okay. That's happened today. He's in 5th on the grid, so provided he doesn't make a stunning first lap, I'll be happy with 2nd or even happier with 1st.
When I arrived, I walked the circuit the wrong way, but since going the right way around, it's a lot safer. So it's going to be a hard race because it's a very short circuit, and 37 laps. It's going to be very tiring on the drivers as well.
The points table after 11 rounds shows Warren Hughes with a huge advantage over Kelvin Burt and Piers Honeysett. When drop scores are taken into account, with competitors only counting their 12 best from 15, that gap closes. Kelvin Burt has failed to score at all in 3 races, where Warren Hughes and Honeysett have scored in all. Pole position has gone to Scott Lakin for the first time this season with a David Sears Motorsport car. Alongside of him, Kelvin Burt, the man who so far this year has won 5 races, going for a 6th here in Scotland. And then Piers Honeysett, 3rd fastest man in practice, with alongside of him the Japanese driver Yasutaka Hinoi. David Sears Motorsport then have 3 of their charges in the top 6: Lakin, Hinoi and Daniel Aldanucci. Warren Hughes, the man to watch out for, the series leader, qualifying only 5th quickest with a lot of work to do. And what better way to watch Hughes than from on board the race car? Waiting now for the lights to change from red to green. Hughes starting from 5th on the grid, don't forget. Ahead of him there, Scott Lakin gets a terrible start. Kelvin Burt it is that leads as Hughes there on the grass for a moment, now through the S's. And it tucked in tight there behind Piers Honeysett. Burt, Lakin, Honeysett. And then Warren Hughes, just ahead of Yasutaka Hinoi, the Japanese driver. Hughes got the jump on at the start. Now Hughes looking for a way past Honeysett, dives to the inside there and locks up a brake and touches Honeysett. He's lost some momentum there, and the Japanese driver Hinoi comes past him. Or does he? Yes, he does just. And Hughes goes from almost being in 3rd place back to 5th in the space of just a couple of 100 yards. I wonder whether or not that touch with Piers Honeysett would have altered the handling of that car at all. Here come the leaders, Kelvin Burt, Scott Lakin, already with a gap now over Piers Honeysett, then Hinoi, then Hughes. A lot of work to do now. And 2 men out there, Mark Olban and Daniel Aldanucci. An incident for those 2 then on the 1st lap, and their race is run. Now, what can Hughes do about Yasutaka Hinoi as they accelerate away from the hairpin there? Close moments going on up and down the field, and an incident at the back of the field there. Sees Mark Cole spinning out, somebody else making their way across the grass. Back with the leaders now. Kelvin Burt very much in charge. Now with about 4 cars length over Scott Lakin. And Lakin using all the road through the S's there, as is Kelvin Burt. These two very evenly matched indeed. Through goes Warren Hughes there, in behind Yasutaka Hinoi. And down to the hairpin come the leaders. Just a tenth of a second between them in practice, and I would suspect even less than that in the race. And really nowhere that Lakin can find a significant advantage to take ground out of Kelvin Burt. The same thing would seem to apply to Piers Honeysett in 3rd place. These three pretty much equidistantly spaced now. Honeysett really does need to finish ahead of Burt to keep his title hopes alive. Burt needs a win. And if he wins here, it'll be his 6th of the season. And that despite not even competing in the first round. Through the arena once again, Kelvin Burt in charge. Lakin in 2nd place, then Honeysett. Now Warren Hughes has dropped back from Hinoi, so Hinoi in 4th, Hughes back in 5th. I don't think there's very much he can do about the Japanese driver in front of him. It may well be that he did indeed damage that car in that incident with Piers Honeysett on the first lap. Through go the first 3 once again round the hairpin. Here comes Hinoi, then Hughes. Next man up there is 15, Nicky Hart, just ahead of 5, Alexander Andrade. Now back with the leader again. Kelvin Burt comes into the arena. Right on the ragged edge there, puts a wheel on the dirt and almost lost it. Burt really is trying very, very hard to extend that gap over Scott Lakin. Not allow Lakin to get close enough to challenge him. Warren Hughes trying 1 or 2 of the same tricks there as he goes through the arena, and there really is not a lot of room for error here at Ingliston. Now here's Michael Edgar. Behind him there, Jeremy Cottrell. Those two have had some tremendous dices this year. Next man up, Mark Williamson, the Australian here, carrying another of the onboard cameras. The Prosperity Diamond Racing team has a number of the members of the old Dragon Motorsport team, which were champions with Alan McNish and Mika Hakkinen a few years ago in Vauxhall Lotus and the Euro Series. Hakkinen, of course, now driving for Lotus in Formula 1. And here is Williamson, just ahead there of David Lloyd, 23-year-old computer systems designer. The pit boards hung out as the race continues, and Cottrell now starts to apply some pressure to Edgar. Dices going on up and down the field, the leading position staying pretty much the same, but Cottrell now trying to make a move on the inside of Edgar and goes through. Neat move there by Jeremy Cottrell then, moves him up to 8th place, ahead of Edgar in 9th. Alexander Andrade and Nicky Hart, the men ahead of them, as Kelvin Burt comes through. Then Lakin. A little bit of a gap before we see Piers Honeysett. Honeysett charges through the S's there. 3rd place, there's 2nd place man Lakin. And here's the leader. Kelvin Burt really hasn't made that much distance on Scott Lakin, just enough to be fairly comfortable there. 36 laps long this race. So there's still time for Lakin to do something about the flying Kelvin Burt in front of him, but it really doesn't look as though it's going to be possible. Now here comes Warren Hughes, just ahead of Nicky Hart and Alexander Andrade. And a bit of Laffery to deal with. The man in question, Matt Aitken. Perhaps more famous for his songwriting abilities than his race driving, but nonetheless, Aitken putting up a very creditable performance. There goes fourth placeman Yasutaka Hinoi through the S's. Kelvin Burt now comes up for the final time, just ahead of Scott Lakin. Lakin has closed that gap on this last lap. But can Warren Hughes hang on to fifth ahead of Nicky Hart and Alexander Andrade? Round the hairpin they go. Here comes Kelvin Burt to take the checkered flag. Burt wins then from Lakin and Honeysett in third place. And that is Kelvin Burt's sixth win of the season in Formula Vauxhall Lotus. The 23-year-old absolutely delighted with that. John Village prepared car, immaculate, and another win then for Kelvin Burt. Confirmation there, Scott Lakin in second place, third place to Honeysett, fourth goes to Yasutaka Hinoi, fifth to Warren Hughes, and sixth to Nicky Hart. Alexander Andrade came through in seventh, and Jeremy Cottrell won that battle with Michael Edgar. Delighted Kelvin Burt there though, because all this means that he narrows that gap in the championship now and gets that little bit closer to Warren Hughes. Hughes, of course, only finished fifth at Ingliston. Here's Honeysett only finishing third. So a lot of work for those two to do in the final rounds. We hear from Kelvin Burt.
Yeah, it was all on the start, as I thought before practice. Scott was slightly in front. It was a staggered grid, but luckily for me, he was off the racing line in all the dust and the rubber, and he just sat there with his wheel spinning. I shot straight past him. Then I went as slowly as I dared just to look after the tyres and the brakes, which went. The brakes did go quite badly. And I was really lucky with the back markers as well. I think Scott got held up twice.
Were you surprised by the distance that you were able to put on him as quickly as you were?
I went flat out for the first 10 laps because I knew we would be lapping about lap 15, 16, something like that. So I wanted a gap in case I got held up. But yes, to be honest, I was a little bit surprised, bearing in mind his practice time. I thought he would stay with me.